Hello, this is Paul Mordetsky with the second of our presentations on drawing the head. Today's video will be about mapping and measuring. Mapping and measuring is a series of strategies that artists use to ensure that their drawings have a level of accuracy and that all the parts fit together in precisely the way that those parts need to fit in order to represent whatever you're drawing. There's no set way to do this. There are multiple strategies. They vary from artist to artist. They vary with the intentions in a particular drawing, and they vary with the different kinds of trainings artists receive in different schools. Nonetheless, there are commonalities in the practice, and we'll go over some of those and see if we can get you to use them to enhance the accuracy of your drawings. Let's take a look. Mapping and measuring is about putting the three-dimensional world onto a two-dimensional surface. If we were to look in reality at my nose, and then look at my cheek, and then look at my ear, that would describe a physical curve in space. This part is closer to you, that part's further away, that part is further away. Can't do that on a piece of paper because it's flat. So when we take this photograph and we look at it, then this point to this point is just a straight line. And this point to that point is a straight line, and that point to that point is a straight line. Every point to any other point is simply a straight line. That is what we need to do in looking at the three-dimensional world so that we can map it out on our piece of paper and collect those points in space into a coherent whole that represents that image or whatever it is that we're looking at. There are some simple mechanics for it. The first one is called sighting and angling, and that really amounts to looking at your object. You can do this with a photograph, of course, it's a little bit easier, but looking at a three-dimensional world. And I'm going to hold a pencil out here and closing one eye and just laying that pencil kind of on a particular angle, whatever that angle is. So you could say a line, the angle from eyebrow to eyebrow like that does a line like that. My nose has an angle like that. Now this is all in relation to the perfectly vertical or perfectly horizontal, or the lines are in relation to each other, and each part can be mapped like that. And we think about just spinning this like hands on a clock. That's sighting. Once I see a particular angle, it's the same angle on my paper. So whatever I see out there, I put here. If that goes like that there, then I do the same thing here. So that needs to be practiced. It's a little tricky, but the concept is simple. Close one eye, hold your pencil at arm's length so that you can see the pencil and see your object together, and then find that angle and then bring it over carefully. That's sighting, and that's used to locate points in space in relation to each other. We also have measuring, where I would take the tip of my pencil and put it something, and then I put my finger down at the bottom, and then I have a unit, and then I would slide that up, and then I see that from the top of my head to the bottom of my eye is about the same distance. So I would want to have that on my piece of paper as well. I could check that distance, and here you want to keep your hand as far away as possible, so that, because if you start doing this, you're going to be measuring different scales. But so let me go back and find that again. So that is the same length from the outside edge of my face to that eye socket. That's something I would want to have in my drawing. So what we do is measure those things and map. And they kind of play out together. You could get away with not actually doing the physical measuring if you do enough mapping. But the mapping is a really good proportional tool, so that we know, for example, that one of these. Here's two of those. So then I may have a rectangle like that, and that would help me to decide what that rectangle looks like. There's other ways to do it. I could find the middle point, take a line down, a line down, a line up, a line up, and I could figure it out that way. And we're going to use all of these strategies. So how do we want to do this? Let's go with this idea that a drawing, and the first decision that you would make about a drawing is that there's going to be a height and there's going to be a bottom, say for that head. And I might put down that for the neck. If I decide that, then I know that I've set up one parameter. I know that there could be a middle point between the two, and I can eyeball that. I wouldn't take out my ruler, but you could do that and kind of just see whether you really did that or not and adjust that. So now I know I have a middle point there. I usually, you could say that's the high point, and this is the low point. And if I sight, I have to do this actually here for the camera. So if I sight that angle and I do something like that, I could create a middle point like that. And also, I don't know which one I want to use, so I'm going to do a straight line down as well too. Let's go with this for a second. Where is that middle? So I know that the eye is about halfway vertically. And then I might look at this thing. I would go like that and try to figure out where about the middle is. And about the middle is about there. So if I've done that, then I've kind of located this point. I can now say an angle from there, an angle from there. I could start to locate points because I have something that is fixed. So if I know that I have this middle, let me get rid of that because I'm going to confuse myself. If I know that I have this point somewhere about here, I can start to sight either gesturally, or I literally could do that for every mark. When I say gesturally, I'm saying by eye. I got that. I got that. So the opening part of my drawing might be beginning to collect a bunch of lines. I know where that is. Now I could ask myself where that is. So I'm not trying to describe what I'm seeing. I'm trying to draw lines and find points in space. I don't actually have to draw the lines, but I'm doing it for you. Figure out a few things. Now let's try something else. I know where that is. I know where I put this line here, so that takes me from this high point to this low point. And that's something like that. So I can go from this high point to a wide point, and a high point to this wide point there, and then this wide point to there, and this wide point back to my other high point. And that, by doing that, I should have a kind of an approximation of if I were to draw a box around that. So then I know that my drawing has to kind of take place in there. And what I would be doing to continue this is very much the same thing that I did in the drawing in that first demonstration. I'd be collecting data. I'd be looking for dimensions, right? So remember this part, that block there. I know where that is. So I know that that's kind of coming down. And I know where that is. So I think I would put that in. Bring this forward. Look at that point to that point. You can guess first and then use mapping to confirm your guess. So that whole thing is kind of coming out like that, but this part is going like that. And that means these lips are doing something like that. So we want to find that middle point. That's an angle like that, and then back in space. Remember that temporal line, and then curving this way. We're going to have this thing moving over my head. My hair's down there. That's doing that like that. To the ear. Where's the ear in relationship to where I think the bottom of the nose is? So if I think the bottom of the nose is about here, the ear's around there. Again, simple straight lines, because we're not describing forms, we're building relationships. So that comes up like that. Now, can you do them with curves? Sure. There are plenty of people who would argue that drawing with straight lines is a bad idea. There's plenty of people who would argue that it's a good idea. But everybody would pretty much go with the idea that getting those angles is what you need to do, because that's the illusion. So how is this moving from back here out and forward, and then this way? It's also useful. See, I'm not holding this like that. I'm holding this at an angle like that. And it's a little bit easier to draw with this in this way. Takes some getting used to, but it actually allows you to draw better. So everything could be measured, checked. I think it's a good idea to kind of put it in and then check after, so you get used to seeing it. The idea is to get better at seeing stuff, not to have to rely on your ruler, so to speak, before you make any decision. Ask myself where the center of that curve is in relation to that eyebrow, and then just extend that. Then where does it turn? Just keep in mind that this aspect of drawing, this layer of drawing, is exploratory. And there's a lot of changes going on. And we're drawing from the bottom up. We're building stuff. So you're going to be wrong a lot, and that's okay. Because again, you're not falling into the pattern of drawing the exact shapes and then saying, "Oh God, they're wrong again." If you do this stuff lightly, then everything easily disappears when you need it, and then you just keep thinking again, well, maybe that needs to go out a little bit. Maybe that should be a little lower down. That needs to come out to here. This needs to kind of come in here, and that goes here, and this is maybe higher. So we want to keep adjusting and adjusting and adjusting. All right? And ultimately, all these lines will start to give you the information to create the shapes that you want. But you want those shapes to come out of very clear location decisions, and not because you thought, it's not that you thought that the nose looked like that. So you want to be able to raise and lower things, change an angle, see how it fits together. And that's how we develop it. So yesterday, well, it was yesterday for me, but whenever you watch the last video, I talked about the geometry of the head, and that's what I focused on. I didn't really talk that much about how I got there. This is how you get there. This is how you start to build the information that you need by making a lot of lines like that and feeling your way into that object, and little by little beginning to set up the information for shape decisions. But they have to come after. There's no point in making a shape decision if it's in the wrong place. That's not going to do you any good. This gives you a chance to think and to calculate. So I would be checking, just making sure that it's largely doing the right thing and then you could adjust it and you could fix it so that it's doing precisely the right thing. So does that really come there? I look at this, it's close. Maybe it needs to go back a little bit. This part of my ear sticks out, and this darker part here creates a shape. Can't see it in the darkness there, but there's probably some hair back there, and that maybe comes up and then over, then this way into whatever hair I have left up there, and then my skull comes forward and down. And the more I do this, the more I can round out my marks. I'm looking a little cadaverous here, but this is more or less true. I drew that eye a little bit, but I'm really kind of staying away from it. You'll see I'm going to cover it up because I don't want to fall prey to putting the eye in and then just have the eye be completely wrong. I'm also leaving out my glasses in these drawings. Now, one of the things that we can do in developing a drawing, if I were continuing this, if this wasn't a demonstration, then at any point, I might take these lines and just kind of knock them back, cut the contrast so I can still see them. I could do it further than that, but then you couldn't see what I'm doing. And then I would maybe begin to put these lines in a little rounder. A little bit more definitively, and I would rebuild my drawing. This would also give me a chance to maybe say, well, maybe that ear needs to come back a little bit, and there needs to be a little bit more space there to get this particular jaw from this particular angle. And then if I did that, then I need to do that with that neck. I need to build the neck coming in towards that center line. Again, I'm making that up because I can't see it in the dark. And that's pretty much the way mapping and measuring would work. You know, it's finding all those shapes. Now I'm going to throw in a little bit of what we did yesterday just to bring it back to that. Just a little bit easier to see what I've drawn. So that first fill-in tone is a medium tone, regardless of how dark things may actually get in the end. And you can see that that's a reasonable drawing of me. To get it more reasonable, you'd spend more time mapping and measuring and erasing and working it back and forth and adjusting your shapes and adjusting your edges a little bit. Every little bit that's off is actually somebody else. Now, this is not part of mapping and measuring. I'm just showing you that if you develop the drawing, if you begin to draw into those dark shapes, or what I set out as dark shapes by making some of those shapes darker still, you develop the forms. I'd have to do a lot more in that eye. So I think this needs to come over. This needs to be a little bit longer. I think this needs to be here. You know, there's more. I think that really does that. So if that's the case, then that maybe needs to do that and needs to come over. And that's the process. Now, you want to catch all that stuff as early as possible so that you can adjust. That's it for today.